Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. And got a lot of comments and things that come in that way, already chiming in, or at least dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate over there. I'm Monica Cervantes, Ion Grimm, and now Austin Redfern, Shining Red Fearn over there chiming in. Good afternoon to you as well. A lot to get into here today. Yes, there are still some of those national political questions, such as the margin of control that conservatives in Congress expect to enjoy. That's still a bit in flux here, but among other things, we've still got a lot of local things to talk about, though federal impacts definitely a part of them. Been watching ever since we were, last talked about it. Some of those numbers coming out locally whenever it comes to the migrant crisis, the migrant crisis dashboard that the city of El Paso has up has been, even though busing from El Paso, at least under El Paso effort to stop, the mixed bag of numbers there has been very interesting to be watching on, and now some even further changes likely coming from that as couple of the headlines here. There's a judge that has now blocked the U.S. from using Title 42 to expel immigrants and migrants, those crossing, of course, without authorization being referred to here to get very technical on it. And that's definitely having some impacts. I mean, we'll break down some of the numbers we've been seeing so far whenever it comes to those local efforts and what impact this potentially could have. It's a mixed bag is about the best way I can say it without really getting into the weeds, of which we will peer in just a minute, because that's if there's anything we do well, I think it's getting in depth on things. But otherwise also have some of more fallout from the elections, including the legislative session. Yeah, Texas gearing up for its major biennial. Okay, I've had this argument before. Every 2 years, we really delve into what the state lawmakers do, and well, it's already underway. In fact, we got releases from some of a good portion of our local state representatives on what they are going to be focused on and what their priorities are going to be, as well as some of the other big ones. I mean, there's a lot up for both grabs, both focus on. I mean, it's complicated. Property taxes, election fraud, and transgender issues. Some of the major pieces of legislation expected ahead of 2023 had, according to the Texas Tribune there. So that's just, ever so a little bit of light reading for you, if you want to think about it that way, for you today, that we'll be breaking down and getting into it here. So if you really want to get over on our socials, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, wherever you may be, wherever you can see us and works for you, that's the right place for you to be, as you're going to drop those comments and reactions throughout the program here. James Holmes doing the same thing. Do appreciate it as well. Helps with all those algorithmic things. But yeah, we're going to be delving into it and really getting into, I mean, of course, the phrase we've used before, elections have consequences. That very much at evidence here as what will then be going forward into this legislative session. Now, for anyone that is not familiar or may have forgotten or just never bothered to pay attention, hi, welcome to the show. The Texas legislative session is this mad dash of lawmaking every 2 years. I mean, say what you will, had this mild thought of it coming into the show today, say what you will about Texas and the way we do or don't do governance sometimes, but we don't have lame duck sessions. I guess technically you could maybe see a little bit of the governor here, but the fact of the matter is we don't have these idle hands. Well, I guess maybe we do. Anyway, point is that once every 2 years, we have about the first half of that next year is this mad dash of legislative priorities, duking it out, battling it out. And that's why, I mean, elections having consequences is absolutely a part of it, because it takes a lot of pre-work. If you're like starting right now, such as anyone elected to state office in the legislature right now. I mean, you're a little bit behind the eight ball there, because you are really going to have to move forward with it. Because essentially, if you're not having legislation move forward and specifically finalized right about now, you're going to have a bad time and be more adrift on the winds of fate than anything else. Because seriously, it takes a lot. All of the inter-session work, the stuff in between the actual sessions of Congress, because I guess the biggest difference between the national legislature and the Texas, both House and Senate, is that they are not there all the time. Sure, there may be hearings, there may be other things going on, but the actual business of legislating, passing bills, and trying to advance laws within the state only happens within this upcoming period. So we've got some of those priorities being released, specifically have in hand here from Rep. Lena Ortega, Joe Moody, as well as one more here, going to try and pull that up, from Mary Gonzalez, who of course just secured her next election here. So a couple other comments coming in there from John Brazelton, Stephen Christopher, and Eric McNabb. John Brazelton mentioning nationally one more race and the Republicans take the House. Yes, keeping our eye on that, though looking a little bit more forward today. But let's get really into some of those big bits of news coming out right now. In fact, a little bit earlier today, as a matter of fact, of what is going on when it comes to border security and immigration issues within specifically our region. There's been a couple of headlines coming out since a little bit earlier today about some new priorities coming out from Texas Governor Greg Abbott, including expanding Texas's migrant busing plan to Philadelphia. That the article title from our news partners there over at KFOX 14. One of the bigger headlines actually going on here, quoting from the Hill here directly, Texas governor declares, quote unquote, invasion at border moves to boost security. Now, of course, there has been a lot of rhetoric that has been around that type of statement, that type of phrasing, but he said in a tweet earlier today, I'm using that constitutional authority and other authorizations and executive orders to keep our state and country safe. The tweet that came out from Abbott here, where's the timestamp on that? About 9:21 a.m. today, saying that I've invoked the invasion clauses of the U.S. and Texas constitutions to fully authorize Texas to take unprecedented measures to defend our state against an invasion. Some of these specific things that then, in a addition to the actual text of the tweet, a picture that was technically more text saying he plans to deploy the National Guard to safeguard our border and to repel and turn back immigrants trying to cross the border illegally, deploy the Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, to arrest and return the border immigrants who crossed illegally, and deploy DPS to arrest illegal immigrants for criminal activity, build a border wall in multiple counties on the border, deploy gunboats to secure the border, designate Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, enter into a compact with other states to secure the border, enter into agreements with foreign powers to enhance border security, and provide resources for border communities to increase their efforts to respond to the border invasion. This, again, a very different set of, beyond some of many of these measures may sound familiar, even though if gunboats is maybe another step being along. The major difference here, of course, being the rhetorical one, and I'm not using that facetiously here, that literally the rhetoric, the word choice he is using is changing here, as he had kind of eschewed using invasion language previously, talking about overwhelming of resources and those kind of things. So mentioning invasion and specifically saying that he is invoking the invasion clauses of the U.S. and Texas constitutions is another step. So this, of course, comes as there were a couple of different changes happening primarily on the federal level, including a federal judge issuing an order Tuesday barring federal authorities from using Title 42, that, of course, Trump-era, pandemic-era rule that allowed the U.S. to quickly expel migrants who crossed the border. Again, further from our news partners there at KFOX 14, U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan called the policy, quote, arbitrary and capricious in his ruling on Tuesday. Now, of course, we've seen some impacts from that policy specifically in our area. Again, if you want to reference, and you can see this for yourself, the Migrant Crisis Dashboard from the El Paso, texas.gov/migrant-crisis. That, again, very interestingly, every time I look at it, have to note that has been saying the migrant crisis has been ongoing since 2018. Direct quote from that. And, of course, some of the questions that have been going on has been the ramping up of the resources that were being required here locally, the busing, and the continued use of resources that getting back from that trip that we had over the weekend, saw it at the airport myself. I knew that y'all have talked about it, but it's one thing to see it for yourself. Kind of startling to see people there in Red Cross blankets in one corner of one of the main lobby areas of the airport, the El Paso International Airport, and as the actual removal of people and people being sent out of the area that way does continue on. One of the notes further from our news partners there at KFOX 14 yesterday, migrants with flight tickets can stay at airport for up to 12 hours. And so it's saying that even though we're down from where we were previously, it has not gone away entirely. So those numbers I was referencing here, that the actual community releases, we hit a rough high water mark, about 6,800 per week back in week 40. So about a month and a half ago. And right after the Title 42 change was made, particularly for the Venezuelan situation, that did end up diving down into about 3,700. But it has since rebounded to an extent. For the last full week, we were back up at 4,666, and already for this week, looking at 575. So the numbers, including the encounters rolling 7-day average and CBP in custody rolling 7-day average, show that there was a definite dip right after the change in policy whenever it came to Title 42, but that it had rebounded from there, even if the in custody rolling 7-day has dipped back down, not quite to that same low point, but we're at about the high water mark for there was about 4,500, and right now, as for the last full week, we're about 2,900. The actual encounters have been, somewhere around that point as well on the rolling average encounters, about 1,500. So that's a lot of data to throw at you, saying that this situation is very much in flux, and particularly with this now decision coming out, two major decisions to keep in mind for this for today. Both that federal decision, federal judge ruling that Title 42 cannot be used in this way. I, having no particular statement I can point at to, I have a fairly certain way I can say that that is going to be appealed, or at least move forward within the courts, or potentially other policy, because to my large understanding, that was essentially the only policy really left when it came to immediate removals or anything besides the asylum process itself here, which the administration and the current White House as itself has said is overwhelming resources, them looking to get more of the immigration judges and those things online. But that takes time, and without any kind of intervening policy in the meantime, that will get even further quickly overwhelmed. But a lot more of the points and comments coming in from that, a lot of people chiming in over on the social media, including Kathy Codry, Richard Janasik, John Browsden mentioned there, and specifically referring to the mayor and other things like that. We'll delve into more on that as we continue discussing this. That's just kind of dipping our toe into it, even if we're well to for that first break of this hour right now. Again, other topics we'll also be exploring today, including the state legislative session. So a lot more that we're going to get into. Jam-packed show for you again today. So if you're over on our social media and including RJ welcome me back to the Global El Paso part of Global America. Get used to the airport, bus stations, etc. I haven't seen the bus stations as much here, but again, the conversation continues on. So got to take that first break of this hour right now. You're, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. More of those comments, more of those situations we'll be discussing coming out of this break. Phone calls a little bit later in the hour, as we usually do. In any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic is stop and go on the 54 southbound from Stan Roberts down to Trans Mountain with a 19-minute delay. It's a 21-minute delay on Global Reach southbound between Liberty Expressway and Montana Avenue. That earlier crash, Gateway North at Paisano Drive, is cleared. All lanes are back open there. And watch for a disabled truck, Gateway North at McCombs. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
As you crunch the numbers trying to get the most out of your dollar, we'll throw in a $1,000 inflation bonus. Much better. Listen every hour from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win $1,000.
Listen to win $1,000 every hour, weekdays from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. It's the 1,000 inflation bonus on News Talk 690 a.m.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Do you know who Eli Whitney is? Well, he's sort of Steve Jobs before Steve Jobs. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hell El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. The Black Friday sales event starts now, so do yourself a favor and don't wait. Beat the rush and get door-busting Black Friday deals on every single new and certified pre-owned vehicle all month long.
Trade and upgrade for less with huge Black Friday savings all month long at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your current trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. Save thousands with 2.9% APR for 72 months, plus $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star with no payments till next year. Get $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Dodge Charger GT, SXT, and on the all-new redesigned 2022 Jeep Compass with no payments till next year. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 2.9% APR is $15.15 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Yellowstone, television's #1 show, is back on Paramount Network.
I, John Dutton, do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the state of Montana against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Featuring an all-star cast led by Academy Award winner Kevin Costner.
The invasion is over.
They will fight you dirty.
Is there any other way?
As the Dutton family fights to protect their legacy, they'll learn power has a price.
Signing this is a declaration of war.
We're already at war.
Yellowstone. New episodes Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Paramount Network.
You want to be a showstopper like The Miz? You want to be awesome? Then you'll want to have a game plan. Whether you're a champion or a bettor, you got to be responsible. The DraftKings Sportsbook offers all the tools you need. You can set a realistic budget and bet within your means. You can set time, deposit, and wager limits so you can have a personal game plan for having fun while being responsible. I practice safe bets, and so should you. Visit DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming to learn about all these tools and more.
Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/responsible gaming for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to join in on the show, particularly through the social media pages at this point during the program, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Yes, if you're driving or any of those other terrestrial radio waves, don't worry, we still got you on the line literally later in the program when we do open up those phone lines. But if you want to chime in throughout, and of course you can do so safely, social media. One of the reasons we have that up there is we have a lot of people chiming in there. Kathy Codry, Ida Beza Gardner, Richard Janicek, Eric McNabb, Glenn Stewart, John Brazelton, a few more. Dropping those likes and reacts, we do appreciate. Richard Janicek, Glenn Stewart, Ida Beza Gardner, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monaco Cervantes, and Ione Grimm. A lot of different comments coming in there, including Glenn Stewart calling out some of the phrasing here, saying illegal immigrant, not migrant. Again, when I'm referring to that there, I'm referring to the migrant crisis dashboard. That's literally what it's labeled from the city of El Paso. I tend to say those that are crossing the border illegally, and use the very descriptive language there, so we kind of move past that, because it sometimes it ends up being a little bit of an argument over semantics, which is just kind of missing the point in my mind here. Again, you're encouraged to use your own language and what works for you when you're talking about this, but think it actually talking about the situation and versus, well, we're referring to it right or not, that ends up being a whole other kind of PC debate that I don't even want to begin touching here. So more comments coming there, including Maria Coleman saying, I hope that the governor sends backup to the El Paso sector. I believe the governor can override a local objection. Departing flights from the El Paso airport is not an option for many now. If the situation continues, it will impact Thanksgiving travel. Possibly there, my note, but continuing her quote there, saying 12 hours at the airport can be defined as loitering. I continue to see more homeless on the streets panhandling. I pray they have not been displaced due to the migrant influx. And Kathy Codry also pointing out over on the YouTube page, saying $64 per person for Thanksgiving dinner at Eddie V's. Not familiar with that establishment, but interesting perspective there, as we do have our price watchdogs there. But let's just say that looking at some of these situations, particularly when it comes to, this is not simple or a one-off comment that has been made there. There are, of course, comments coming in from those in the nonprofit community about the situations involving those on the street, including, of course, further from our news partners there at KFOX 14. that as there were releases happening, specifically, they noted that CBP released 600 in El Paso from November 4th through the 2nd, for the 7th, rather than another 148 released on November 10th, and 50 more this past weekend. 798 provisional releases done in over a week. John Martin, the deputy director over at the Opportunity Center for the Homeless, says that he is seeing a big increase in people at his shelter because as these releases happen, of course, there is that local, the migration and immigration and border security focused part of the local nonprofit community that more or less interfaces with this. But even as we are at elevated levels from whatever normal may be considered to be, it definitely is still a strain of resources. So he is saying, again, speaking to our news partners there, that, again, Opportunity Center for the Homeless already seeing a lot of the local homeless population due to the cold, which he says he was expecting. I mean, El Paso is considered generally one of those places that you go when everywhere else gets too cold. So if that doesn't happen, I mean, if El Paso is cold too, what are you expecting to do? So those are some of the things they were expecting, homeless population, but not expecting to see the consistent number of migrants showing up at his front door. And further quote there, we are very concerned at this point. I will say the weekend was what we anticipated. We saw a large number of individuals and have so far have not, as of last week, not had to pass it along here. And again, if you're disagreeing with any of the quotes of the reporting done there, be specific with it, because just saying, oh, they're a bad organization, yeah, we're just going to move right on past that, because if you're shouting over our heads, we're not going to reach up and grab that for you. But otherwise, I mean, these situations are significant. And I mean, there's even more, including the city of El Paso preparing to handle people on streets without shelter during these cold months. I mean, we've already haven't hit quite that freeze just yet. But even beyond that, I mean, there's possibilities of it coming. We do occasionally get the snow, the 2-week trial period of winter that I call it, just about every year, and maybe even be more this year. Only time will tell. So those are some of the compounding factors and situations we're looking here. And again, if you want to see some of the raw data for yourself, yes, busing has ended out of this area, but of course, transportation. And when I say busing, let me be a little bit more specific, because there are still people getting on buses out of this area. What I'm referring to there is the chartering of buses being done by the city of El Paso, and any kind of complementary efforts being done by the county of El Paso. But the city of El Paso was the major payout for that. And still, according to the estimated costs and reimbursements, that the estimated cost for the fourth quarter, as of, I still need to update it there, see about updated last October 20th, and we're coming up on the next month past that. That was about 4 million, let me get this correct here, 4.02 million. It was 4.6 million the previous month. Total cost estimated by the city of El Paso, including their public data as of this point, but still as of October 20th, looking like it's about $8.86 million in total estimated costs that have been incurred so far, with about $2.2 million actually received so far, including reimbursements or pre-funding of some of these things. Of course, this has been the majority of these, and the vast majority of these. I mean, there was about approximately, let's call it about $225,000, just over $200,000 were the expenses related to these things, again, from the city of El Paso in the first 2 quarters of the year. So we're talking, of course, January through June, and it's been these last 2 quarters that the costs have really skyrocketed from the city of El Paso's perspective. And of course, the costs aren't limited there either when it comes to the local perspective, the county of El Paso. Some of those conversations that we were having, of course, with the now reelected county judge, Ricardo Samaniego, on what some of the priorities are there, what are the things they're looking at. So there are other efforts as part of it as well. Then yeah, I'm definitely not anyone's accountant there. Absolutely will never claim that. But more specifically, the fact that the situation is ongoing and the numbers are in flux, not all up or all down, but a mixed bag. And a couple of factors come to mind here when it comes to the patterns that we have seen, or at the very least, the more general patterns, because of course, this is breaking the norm in its own way. But as I've said, and will probably continue to say for a very, very long time, the only common and norm here has been change. And some people unhappy with the way politicians have been handling some of this funding. Understand that entirely, though I hope you definitely made your representation of your opinions on that way at the ballot box, or at least have another common way to do so, because we got more of those runoff elections for city council coming on here. Anyway, more specifically, there are 2 factors of the way that, again, in general, patterns of migration have happened when it comes to the border and those crossing without authorization. Winter months tend to see a bit of a drop-off, at least in other portions of the border historically, because, well, it's not exactly pleasant. Sure, we may be the desert, but that doesn't mean it can't get cold here. So even the transiting through this area, again, the norm was that it wasn't happening right here. People go to South Texas or like through to Arizona or California. So the fact that it's still seeing arrivals here in our area is an aberration in its own right, but maybe one of those, again, shifting norms that we have to deal with here. And of course, there's the complementary change that also tends to happen in the heat of the summer. So with that changing but of course, these other factors of changing federal laws with this, or not laws, policies and support for them, I guess the best I can say is stay tuned, because this is likely to change and probably going to continue to change for quite a much longer time. Yeah, we'll keep our eye on it and, of course, tell you what some of the biggest updates are, but a lot moving around with that as of today even. And, I mean, there's other action going on here even with this, including more details probably coming out of the governor's office. But tell you what, got to take that next break, overdue for that next break of this hour right now, because a whole lot more we want to get to. Again, legislative session is on the brain here as well. So we'll be taking those phone calls a little bit later in the program, as we usually do. But in the meantime, keep some of those comments going over there. We'll keep delving into those. And Kathy Cody asking what happened with the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot happened to the enforcement of our immigration laws. I mean, technically, some laws are still in place, but particularly policy. I mean, the law, okay, let me put it this way. The laws definitely happening the way that they are more or less allowed to do. So you got to remember that many of the things, particularly under the previous administration, were not laws. Those were policies being enacted within the entire, again, it's the branches of government, the executive branch of government. And so it not being a law passed by Congress means that it's subject to change within the same branch. Part of the situation we've been in, as we mentioned and I've talked about previously, it's been decades since new, real comprehensive immigration law was passed. So, not meaning to pick on you there, but it's actually a decent point to get into. But again, got to take that next break right now before I talk straight through it again. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. We'll talk more about this and all the factors involved in it. Again, legislative session. There's hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions at stake. So as much as we can cram in, back after this break with more here on Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. A murder investigation where a 52-year-old man was found dead in his home in northeast El Paso remains unsolved. The victim, who remains unidentified, was found dead in a home at 8600 Robert Drive on Thursday. During an investigation, authorities learned of another shooting victim at a home on Kenneth Street near Robert Drive. Police officials say the second shooting victim survived but did not want to cooperate. Our news crews saw a man being placed into an ambulance on Kenneth Street. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has announced that he's invoking the invasion clauses of the U.S. and Texas constitutions in his latest effort to address border security. In a tweet today, Abbott says that the move will fully authorize Texas to take unprecedented measures to defend the state against a so-called invasion. In the past, Abbott has stopped short of calling the situation at the border an invasion. The actions listed by the governor today include building a border wall in multiple counties and deploying gunboats to secure the border. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Seeing a lot of delays right now on your El Paso afternoon commute on North Mesa Street from the downtown exits Wyoming Yandell up to Artcraft. It's a 14-minute delay. Slow traffic on Global Reach southbound from Liberty Expressway down to Montana. That's a 20-minute delay. And an accident reported downtown Stanton south of Paisano at 3rd Avenue. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. It looks like we had another cold day for us today, but that was expected. And as we get going into Wednesday, we've got another push of colder air moving in, and that's going to make for a cooler and somewhat breezy day for your Wednesday. And that combination will certainly add to the chill. We will continue with our cold temperatures during the week, with possibly seeing our first freeze in El Paso. Log on to KFOXTV.com for your latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
The SEC just gave a controversial ruling, creating an enormous risk for almost every single cryptocurrency out there. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You wash your hands, you brush your teeth, but what about the nose? How do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, flushing out allergens, mucus, and germs. And it's why cleaning your nose, the body's air filter, is the next evolution in daily personal hygiene. People try Navage for lots of reasons: sinusitis, colds, allergies, snoring, things that make it hard to breathe through your nose. But over time, they find that cleaning their nose makes them feel better, a lot better. Over 3 million Navage users have written more than 100,000 reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, saying, "Best product I've ever used," and "Amazing, I love my Navage." Navage helps you breathe better, sleep deeper, and snore less, but the biggest payoff is improved health. Navage is good personal hygiene and can help you stay healthier. At Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Kelly Blue Book Instant Cash Offer is an official offer to buy your car. Enter your vehicle ID info, answer some questions, then get a no-obligation offer to sell or trade it. Then choose a dealer to purchase your car, schedule a time, and drive away with confidence. For all of the its, KBB.com it. This report is sponsored by Kelly Blue Book.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming in that way. Some of the more recent ones: Richard Genesee, Kathy Codry, Eric McNabb, RJ, John Brazelton, Glenn Stewart, and more. Again, one of the better ways you can do so throughout the program, add your 2 cents there, including Kathy Codry wanting to take a step further than what the governor was suggesting in his most recent policy statements: gunboats and alligators at the border. I don't think those two would mix that well. Just saying, but if you got a plan there, be very curious to see it. And RJ saying Title 42 is blocked, yet Biden extended COVID state of emergency, and again referring to the governor's use of the phrase invasion. So, I mean, it's blocked. I guess if you're upset about the dichotomy of situations there, talk with a federal judge. But again, I would be very surprised if there wasn't some kind of appeal for when it comes to, well, the Biden administration and on that Title 42 issue. And Ed Clore also chiming in there saying, looks like Kevin McCarthy has won House Speaker designation. I mean, he was definitely pushing for it, and these are some preliminary votes. The actual vote will come once the next session of Congress gets underway. So, I mean, it's a trajectory, so to speak, but I know at the very least that there are a lot of movements, and there could be even within the party insurgent efforts to try and move around that, given some of his past proclivities, shall we say. Like, I know, for instance, that there is definitely a lot of rumbling whenever it comes to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Much as he wanted to be Senate Majority Leader, that not looking like it's going to be the case, of course, even though there is that still very pending runoff election in Georgia. Deja vu all over again. Boy. Anyway, some of the comments coming in also from John Brazelton, an interesting point that not quite sure actually works the way you think it is, saying, quote, I love the fact that illegals are supposed to be desperate and poor people, yet the current group are arriving with enough money to buy airplane tickets to their final destination. That would be the part that I believe you're mistaken on, because specifically the idea of them having enough money for an airplane ticket, I'm not saying that it's never the case. There may be some that have managed to have enough resource to be able to do that. But my understanding is that for the majority of them, that is where the local nonprofit community comes in, and where they would usually put them on buses, in some cases also putting them on planes. So I think that's basically locally donation based. So if you're calling that anything besides the generosity of this community, I think you would be mistaken there. So a few other things, but of course, and Kathy Codry commenting on the whole Ditch Mitch thing. Anyway, point is that even with some of the things going on federally and in federal Congress, we are going to have probably a hell of a session coming up for the Texas legislature. Just a couple of the things that are at issue here. Besides the many issues, I got some of the releases from our local legislative delegation, Texas legislative, not federal legislative delegation, that is going to be going to the state house come January, and they might be able to visit back here. But if you got any friends in that roster, don't expect to see them much in the next 6-7 months here, because again, we have mentioned this before, but every time it seems to bug out eyes a little bit in someone who hasn't heard this before. One of the big issues, besides many priorities, some of the bills already having been filed, as noted by Texas Tribune so far, covering things such as public education, guns, abortion, LGBTQ Texans' rights, energy, healthcare, voting on elections, disaster declarations, property taxes, and opioid testings. Like, sure, there are going to be a lot of priorities, and more or less the governor and lieutenant governor are going to be in a driver's seat in their own way. At the very least, the lieutenant governor is the head of the Senate and presides over it, so he pretty much gets to decide what will or won't make it there. And of course, Dan Patrick is an interesting figure on his own right, worthy of probably his own show at some point here once we if we ever decide to do a Texas legislature focus series. But we will be doing something similar to that, as we are of course going to, as we do every time that we've been on air and a legislative session has been approaching, wanting to talk with all of our local legislators. But before I talk about some of the priorities that have been brought up so far from the local state delegation, that there is the other kind of underlying, it's not exactly going to be every single bill referring to this amount, but it's going to be underlying in probably just about all of them. $27 billion is what the state comptroller has forecast that there will be extra in the state coffers and in the budget this year. That also will include additionally more in the savings account, also known as the rainy day fund, again, further as mentioned by Texas Tribune there. So if you ever feel like this session, maybe looking back on it, hindsight being 2020, who knows, that this section had a little bit of extra gas, a little bit of extra oomph in it, is because there is literally more at stake than there has been in even previous, again, Texas Tribune calling this unprecedented amount of funds. So I think that's just going to amp this whole upcoming session up to 11, because whenever there's more to fight for, small people, small hills, and want to be king of it, sure, that's a conversation that can be had. But again, $27 billion, that's more than just walking around money. So I expect there to be a lot of trying to cut up the pieces of that pie, so to speak, so that it's going to be an interesting session to watch out here. But wanted to mention at least a few of some of the priorities being put up with when it comes to parts of our local state delegation, particularly State Rep Lena Ortega filed 14 bills, a little bit, let me look at my date here, earlier this week. Again, the first day that bills could actually be filed for the 80th legislature. So just on some of her priorities: healthcare, transportation, gun safety, some of the major ones that her office is putting out here, including, of course, not of course, but first time you may have heard of them. These are potentially titled here HBs, House bills. HB 56 that extends Medicaid coverage for at least 12 months postpartum. HB 101 requires that one member of the Texas Transportation Commission reside in a border county. And HB 155 closes a background check loophole by requiring private firearm sales and transfers in Texas to require background checks. And HB 129 increases the age to own a semi-automatic weapon from 18 to 21. Now, of course, these are all proposed and what will be potentially getting acted on within this legislative session. We're at not exactly the inciting step, but the first time we're going to be really publicly hearing about a lot of this legislation is as the bills get filed. So this is just some of the local perspectives. So that was some that Lena Ortega is focusing on here. State Rep Joe Moody putting out here that some of the bills he is putting forth focused on things such as Uvalde, including HB 22, to quote the release directly, quote, to allow our local sheriffs to learn when many guns or magazines are purchased by one person in a short time. Most of those sales are going to be enthusiasts who mean no harm, but some may be like the 18-year-old who bought 2 rifles and 60 magazines before murdering children at Robb Elementary. Also filing bills, furthering on from the statement here, to increase access to mental health resources at schools, open records up to the public after mass shootings, another situation where there's no one left to prosecute, and memorialize victims of mass shootings at the state capitol. Also including some of his things, border criminal justice efforts, including broader criminal justice efforts, including death penalty reform, youth justice, and cannabis decriminalization. That being one of the, not exactly hallmarks, but more consistent efforts coming out of Joe Moody's time in office there. And last one I want to mention here in this context, Mary Gonzalez, State Rep District 75, filing her bills as well. Just listing off a few of them here as they have them listed. House Bill 37, creating a special commission to recommend ways to improve student grading and school accountability. House Bill 250, enable crime victims, especially victims of family and dating violence, to receive relocation compensation under the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. House Bill 99, to provide digital citizenship training in public schools so children can better understand and navigate the dangers of disinformation on social media. HB 245, which raises the pay of community attendants for people with disabilities to $15 per hour and permits spouses and other family members to act as attendants. And House Bill 96, which would allow removing Border Patrol agents and Customs and Border Protection officers' names from public property tax lists, protect them and their families from threats of intimidation or retaliation by cartels. So a lot of different points being made there, and some other interesting conversations going on here, including just some other things not related to the legislature. But I know that this is getting deep into the weeds, but that's what the legislative session is going to be. A few things will obviously rise to the surface and the big issues will become clearer, but those are just some of the tidbits of what will be coming up here. So we're getting close to that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we will go ahead and open up those phone lines. The number to call there is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Did have a comment come in off air in between the actual in between our times on air, in between our segments here. James wanted to say that when it comes to some of those immigration, border security, homeless situations that we've been talking about earlier in this program, saying essentially that snowbird homeless people coming down from slightly northern reaches such as, say, Colorado, where sure we get cold here, they get a lot colder up there, saying that kind of arrival or influx at this point during the year is normal, but what is not as normal is also having a migrant influx happening at the same time, which again, we'll see what happens if that continues on or continues at pace, but only time will tell there. But let's go ahead and take that break right now. And John Browsden on the state, appreciate the comment, at least germane to the legislative session, saying, I love our local Democratic politicians. All their legislation involves spending taxpayer money. Again, there's quite a lot of it up for grab this time around, so we'll see what priorities rise to the top or not. $27 billion. Yeah. Anyway, RJ saying homeless snowbirds, I think it would be the, technically correct. Yeah, the homeless that are being forced south by the arrival of snow, so to speak. Anyway, got to take that break right now. We'll take your comments and such more on, of course, the social media and also on the line there if you want to get in that number one more time, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On your El Paso freeways, Gateway South at Sean Haggerty, a crash with injuries. Vehicles are off to the left, blocking the left shoulder. Stay right. 54 southbound, McCombs to Kenworthy. That's a 14-minute delay. Slow traffic on Global Reach southbound from Liberty Expressway down to Montana is a 22-minute delay. Mesa Street northbound from the downtown exits up to Artcraft, 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
The SEC just gave a controversial ruling, creating an enormous risk for almost every single cryptocurrency out there. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Dana Schwartz, host of the hit podcast Noble Blood. Join me on my new podcast, Stealing Superman, for a deep dive into the shocking true crime saga of the theft of a priceless comic book from the home of Nicolas Cage.
Someone targeted this very specific, very talented actor and stole something that is very specific to his interest.
Listen to Stealing Superman on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
One day you bring them home. The next day, they're packing up the car and heading to college. Childhood moves fast, so the UNEST app makes it easy to save for your child's future by putting smart investing tools right in the palm of your hand. With UNEST, you can even grow your account with every purchase you make from brands like Disney Plus and DoorDash through the UNEST app. Start investing today. Download the UNEST app from the App Store or Google Play. See terms and conditions at unest.co. That's UNEST.co.
On a busy construction site, things can be misinterpreted. Bring in the bulldozer can sound a lot like,
building looks mediocre.
Designs need a do-over.
or even,
Install a roller coaster? Okay.
be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk. From the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building, Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, can we actually bring in the bulldozer?
Sometimes life makes choices for us, so we need to make the most of the choices we do have. If you qualify for Medicare and Medicaid, then El Paso Health Plus is the plan for you. This local plan offers supplemental benefits like dental, vision, OTC benefits, and much more. El Paso Health Plus also has programs designed to keep you independent and healthy. You have choices. Choose local. Choose El Paso Health Plus.
It's Provember at Lowe's, and you can save up to $750 on select major appliances from Hisense and get free delivery on items $396 or more in-store or online. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for details. Offer ends 11/30.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly at this point during the program, where we, of course, have the phone lines that are now open, in addition to the social media channel. So if you want to call in, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. And, of course, a lot of comments coming in over on the social media. Dropping those likes and reacts. Let's start with that. Alex Campos, Richard Genesee, Glenn Stewart, Ida Beza Gardner, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monica Cervantes, and, cuts off the list one more. Okay, I'll find out who that last person is because I want to give you credit where it's due here. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a comparison. I think it's Ion Graham, but if I'm missing anyone here, that was unintentional, just things don't always show up the right way sometimes here. But again, if you want to get on the line, that is the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. If we're calling the line here right now, we do have Andrew on the west side with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, Andrew, thank you. I wanted to talk about briefly these proposed gun bills that are being that are going to be filed or have been filed for the next legislative session.
Again, this is just a smattering of them. This is by no means an in-depth look, but it certainly is, again, looking at other coverage, including the Texas Tribune's. This is very likely to be one of the priorities that continues to come up.
Okay, well, just off the, right out of the box, let me tell you, okay, having been a criminal justice practitioner for 32 years and dealing with criminals, okay, these criminals they see this stuff, those that can read are laughing at these legislators. Number two, one of the most asinine bills in there was that is proposed by Ortega. I don't know which Ortega it is. But it proposes a ban on magazines over 10 rounds. Okay, now what's ridiculous about that bill, besides it's not going to pass, is that it'll also penalize police officers. The way it's written, penalize police officers that are off duty. Okay.
Interesting.
Figure that
Okay.
out. leaves them up for potential criminal prosecution. Then you have another bill that defines assault weapons. Now, it's not banning assault weapons, but it imposes a 1,000% tax on those weapons, which literally standard. If you have an AR-15 rifle, you're going to wind up paying $10,000 for an AR-15 in the state of Texas if that bill goes into effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I don't see a single gun measure in there or any type of bill in that's being proposed that would enhance any type of criminal penalties or any type of sanctions on would-be criminals who use guns. All I can say is, people who write these bills, they need to go back to law school and get re-educated.
Yeah, I don't know if that was, there are more than one Rep Ortega, I'm aware, so I don't know if this is the Rep Ortega. We have Lena Ortega from representing House District 77 here in the El Paso area. So haven't seen that one noted you mentioned there in the El Paso area.
HB 197. I qualified my statement.
Yeah,
I
you
do
did.
not know which Ortega it is.
HB 197. I'll have to look that one up for myself here. So interesting, but of course these are just the very preliminary, and whether or not any of these are actually going to be heard or move forward is the next big question that'll come a little bit closer to the actual session.
Yes. Well, let me just say this one thing. These people couldn't get Beto O'Rourke elected. I seriously doubt that they're going to get these bills through the Texas legislature the way it is made up right now. But anyway, I turn the mic back over to you.
All right. Thank you very much for the point of the call. Do appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and take that next break right now because there's a whole lot more to talk about here. So, again, if you want to get on the line, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Taking that break, top of the hour news coming up next, and after that, more of your phone calls, comments, and everything we do at this point during the program, so stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On your El Paso freeways, Gateway South at Sean Haggerty, a crash with injuries. Vehicles are off to the left, blocking the left shoulder. Stay right. 54 southbound, McCombs to Kenworthy. That's a 14-minute delay. Slow traffic on Global Reach southbound from Liberty Expressway down to Montana is a 22-minute delay. Mesa Street northbound from the downtown exits up to Artcraft, 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
At Affordable Dentures and Implants, that moment when we see a patient smile is everything to us. And we're proud to have helped millions of patients improve their smiles through affordable tooth replacement options. So whether it's a single tooth, full dentures, or dental implants, Affordable Dentures and Implants is here to help you. Go ahead and smile. Our new El Paso office, led by Dr. Kiso Uradiegu, is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. To schedule a free new patient consultation, call 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. That's 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. Again, our new El Paso office is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. Affordable Dentures and Implants. Go ahead and smile.
Go ahead and smile. Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzzed driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says, "I'm a catch," more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke.
because buzz driving
News on
is
the
drunk
hour
driving.
and the
A
half.
message from the National
Traffic
Highway
and
Traffic
weather
Safety
all day.
Administration.
News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The president of Poland is raising military readiness after unconfirmed reports of a Russian missile landing in Poland, killing 2 people. Poland is a NATO member, and Fox News reports the Polish president described the incident as an Article 4 situation when a member state feels threatened by another country or terrorist organization. Polish radio reports there was an explosion at a grain plant near Ukraine, but cannot confirm it was a missile. The man accused of attacking House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband is pleading not guilty. Lisa Taylor has more.
David DePop appeared in San Francisco federal court this morning. He's charged with attempted kidnapping and assault in connection to a break-in that left Paul Pelosi with serious injuries. He faces decades in federal prison if convicted of each charge. His next court appearance is set for November 30th. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Current House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has won GOP support in his bid to become Speaker of the House. The vote took place today, and he came out on top by a margin of 188 to 31. Herschel Walker says he wants the people of Georgia to have a voice in the U.S. Senate.
Right now, we need new leadership in Washington. We need people in Washington that foreign leaders going to respect. Right now, I don't think the foreign leaders respect some of the leadership we got in Washington because what happened in Afghanistan. And Senator Warnock didn't even hold Joe Biden accountable for that.
He made that remark a few weeks before voters decide whether he or incumbent Democrat Raphael Warnock win a runoff election. Republican Walker says Warnock hasn't done anything for Georgia and he's failed the people of his state. Oregon is now the first state in the nation to make affordable health care a fundamental right. Measure 111 was passed by voters, and Oregon will change its constitution to explicitly say health care is a right. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The FBI director says his agency has national security concerns over the Chinese-owned video app TikTok. During a hearing before a House committee, Christopher Wray said the Bureau is concerned the Chinese government could use TikTok to gather data on millions of users in the U.S. He said data could be used for influence operations or to control the software on millions of devices. Police are looking for suspects who robbed a jewelry store in Manhattan's Diamond District. Scott Pringle has more.
The NYPD says 2 men wearing all black with black masks went into a store on West 47th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues around 8:30 last night. They then robbed the place at gunpoint and took off in a vehicle.
An Iowa man says he has 3 bobcat kittens hanging around his backyard. Wendy Wild has the details.
Tom Alex is calling them Bob Kittens, and he says spotted a juvenile bobcat in his backyard, and then another one, and then he says the third up in a tree. Alex says the 3 Bob Kittens are playful, but they are also actively hunting birds and mice. Alex has photos and even a video to prove it, although we don't know the exact location of his home in West Des Moines. The video shows that he lives in a heavily residential area. Bobcats are native to central Iowa. They are significantly smaller than the mountain lions we occasionally hear about, but small pets and small children should not be left unattended.
A man is dead after getting knocked off the top of a semi-truck in Texas. Houston police say the unidentified man either jumped or climbed onto the tractor trailer as it was driving down the freeway. He began dancing on top of the truck before being knocked off as the vehicle went under a bridge. He was rushed to an area hospital where he was pronounced dead. The driver of the semi was unaware of the dancing stowaway and was later released from custody when it was determined he was not impaired. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
The crypto markets are melting down again with the crash of the second largest crypto exchange after it was attacked. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. So listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
What if there was an app where you could listen to this radio station plus hundreds more from across the country? What if that app had every song from every artist that you love, along with the biggest podcast in the world?
Impossible.
Well, we couldn't find an app with it all. So we made it. And then we made it completely free. The free iHeartRadio app is the future of audio, and it's available now in your app store. Listen to what you want, when you want, wherever you want to. Download the free iHeartRadio app for all the music, radio, and podcasts you love.
John, we can't keep putting this off.
Okay, I'll clean the gutters.
I'm talking about your dad.
Well, what can we do? He wants to stay in his house.
We can make his house safer.
You know, he's a proud guy. He's not going to take all our fussing lying down.
That's the idea.
For older people, falling and breaking a hip can be devastating. For easy ways to make home safer, visit orthoinfo.org/falls. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the Orthopedic Trauma Association.
If you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my friends.
For my community.
For everyone here. We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies us. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming in over there, and those primarily over on the Facebook, dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate Flaco Jimenez, Alex Campos, Richard Genesee, Glenn Stewart, Ida Beza Gardner, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monica Cervantes, and Ione Grimm. Of course, there's more to come there and a lot more comments. We post some of the comments up on screen if you want to check those out for yourself, but there's a lot more than we can get to there. Also, again, that phone line open, full up at the moment, but if you want to squeeze in a little bit later, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. And a lot of interesting things and other stuff being posted up over there, including ideas about this legislative session or the ideas behind them or what will be happening here, including Eric von Holstein-Rathlow chiming in here. We're doing the rock on today and the peace sign enough. And then one of the points we're making there is that making guns and ammo hard to purchase and expensive only hurts lower income people who live in high crime areas. They can't afford to protect themselves. Police very rarely stop a shooting. They show up in time to investigate and document something that has already happened. We've mentioned this a few times on the show here, but the idea of police being a crime prevention method is really more of an after effect of them being crime after effects coverers. I mean, if you're really wanting to make sure you prevent crime, it's not really what law enforcement is geared towards. This is not a dig on them saying they're not doing their jobs, but like literally, it's not a part of it, because as much as there has to have been in the 21st century a move towards crime prevention, that's more of an intelligence operation than anything, because unless you've got omnipresence, which I don't think anyone is ever really going to suggest that we have literally a law enforcement presence on every corner, because the cost, the expense, the training, the time, the logistics, like none of that ends up working out very easily or well. Like, sure, you can do it for a minute. We do tend to do it during high profile events, parades, celebrations, concerts, things like that. But in general, yeah, that's a problem here. Any case, yeah, Eric von Holstein-Rathlow saying I'd carry a cot, but they're too heavy. Yeah, that's definitely a part of the conversation. So individuals being more involved in their own, personal safety, I think, is an important thing. So if we're going to go and try and re-argue these not so true truisms such as guns kill people, given the fact that I have a number of them and they have never hurt anyone, and Well, I also don't let people I don't trust to operate them. Starts bringing up the operator question a little bit more there, doesn't it? Again, if all you're going to do is spout truisms and the same old lines again at me, hey, we're going to move on. B, it's not exactly hard to argue against those if you're just going to rehash the same old points. Just saying. Anyway, let's get to those phone lines again. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 587-654-KTSM. We have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make a few comments. Number one is President Biden met with Xi yesterday, and there was no mention about the fentanyl deaths, which are being caused by the fentanyl coming from China, and that's 300 per day. That's 109,500 per year in the United States, and the president didn't think it was important to mention it. But on the same day that Biden was speaking with Xi, Mexico is running an ad stating that, and he said, the U.S. has a fentanyl crisis, and I'm quoting them. And during the ad, they were showing this community in Philadelphia. I don't know if everybody's seen it. It was horrible. It was heartbreaking to see these people who've ruined their lives because of drugs and mostly because of fentanyl. But the moderator was saying that we cannot let Mexico turn into a community like we're seeing in the United States. So what was so alarming to me is here we have a third world country using the greatest country in the world as an example of what not to do in their country. And they're urging their youth not to go the way they saw our citizens in the streets. That was really, really sad. And today, Mayorkas has the gall to testify before Congress, and he's still saying that our borders are secure. He just fired Magnus. I mean, they just needed, or Magnus, they just needed a scapegoat, actually. My hope is that Mayorkas gets impeached. But the irony of this all is that one man who is single-handedly destroying our country will probably get a promotion in the administration because that's how it is. The worse you do, the higher up you go, unfortunately. And unfortunately, here I go. El Paso felt that Escobar deserved another term in office. I didn't vote for her, but many people did to get her back in. And today they interviewed Cuellar, Congressman Cuellar, and he said that legal migration is not happening at our border. He said the border is absolutely open and it is absolutely not under control. And apparently the Republicans were trying to recruit him to change parties, but he said he will continue to be a conservative Democrat. Well, good for him. I wish our Congresswoman would take some advice from him or look at him and take a view of what maybe changes she should be making. But I was doing some figures, and fiscal year 2020, last year the President Trump was in, the apprehensions or the crossings were 458,000. Fiscal year 23, just the second year that Biden is in, is 2.4 million. So the 2 years, think about this, the 2 years that Biden has been in, the total crossings were 4.1 million, and that doesn't include the approximate 1 million getaways, okay? And I was thinking, what's the population of El Paso, the metropolitan area, and Juarez combined? That's 2,600,000 people. Imagine transplanting El Paso and Juarez 3 times within the United States, because that's how many people have come in 2 years with Biden. That I hope that gives people a perspective of the amount of illegal immigration that's crossing our borders that we don't know who they are. I mean, I mentioned before how Mayorkas and this administration have made a mockery of our borders. Well, think about the border policies. They're like circus acts. Today, a court rendered Title 42 illegal. So what does that mean for the Venezuelans? There's some camped out on our border that want to come in. In addition to that, the U.S. is going to start flying Cubans back to Mexico. I mean, back to Cuba, excuse me. I mean, we're all over the map. This administration has absolutely no idea how to control the border, how to seal the border. I don't know. I mean, these are facts. And I hope I don't know what we can do in the next 2 years. I'm hoping that the Republican Congress can put some sort of a break on the insanity that we're feeling and deal with the fentanyl that's destroying our communities, that now nations like Mexico are using as an example. That's frightening. So I don't even know what to think anymore, what to feel anymore, because people don't listen, or if they listen, they just don't care. I can't imagine not caring about our sovereignty.
I mean, yeah,
so we have another 2 years.
The people who are saying like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't even know how to begin talking with them. But mostly ask them what's important to you and how do you think that relates or doesn't. But there's not a lot of people in my life that are like, oh no, I don't care about politics with art that let's just call it that I associate with anymore. Anyone who does, I'm usually willing to have a conversation with and say, what is actually going on with these issues, and they'll eventually maybe try to figure out the connections here. I mean, the idea of being a check on the administration was more or less one of the major undercurrents, if not necessarily present in every race that happened in these midterm elections. I mean, there were a lot of other, you brought up some of the issues that people were also running on, and whether or not the whole red wave actually materialized as it was. I mean, there were some different situations here in Texas, among other things, state by state varies greatly. But yeah, the idea of there being anywhere near a majority or super majority control of Congress is absolutely not going to be happening at this point. But if there is still that control being had, it will be an interesting situation where we have a split House and Senate, and then, of course, the administration in the White House. What can or can't be done, there are still even differences between the bodies as they exist, of course, the ability to create certain types of legislation, funding things, those questions, and, of course, the subpoena power. That's one of the bigger changes I expect that we will see out of the change of hands of Congress, such as, again, if it does move forward with that way and they're able to not have a kerfuffle like might happen on the Senate side of things whenever it comes to majority or minority leadership. At the very least, some of the committees like January 6th will probably cease operating in anywhere near the capacity they have if they exist at all after that. So some things are going to change whenever it comes to this, again, outcomes of the midterm elections. But in terms of actually being a check on the administration, as was very much the campaign line, I guess that's kind of remaining to be seen, because whenever you start getting to these tight margins, let's just look at the way the Senate has worked up to this point in terms of this administration. You end up seeing quite a lot of, personalities emerge, is the best way I can think to put it, when we have those, like Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, or, even Lisa Murkowski, those kind of, reason we know those names is because it's not just, if you decide to do something differently, it doesn't really matter because the, weight of the rest of the votes will still carry it. And that could potentially emerge within Congress, where there are a few, there have definitely been in the past a few notables that will step out and say, no, I'm going to vote what I think is correct, regardless of what party dogma is. And the potential for that to merge is maybe one of the more interesting stories we can watch out of the national legislature over the next coming couple of years.
Well, I think, Andrew, the parties are so entrenched right now. You've got the far left, you have the far right, and then you have those of us in the middle that want sanity and law and order. And how do you get the far left and far right together to kind of move towards the middle? That's a big challenge. And especially when you're trying to fight an administration that wants open borders. It's clear to the whole world. It's been clear for 2 years already that that's what they want. And so they don't help themselves and they don't help us. And now these court orders coming out, I just see I see more chaos because nobody wants to come to the middle. So we'll just have to pray for the best and hope that, and then now it's going to be harder for the Senate to make, like you say, you hope that there's some reason there, but legislation coming. I don't think so, because it's right now it's what, 50 to 49.
Yeah.
And if the Herschel goes loses, well then it's going to be 51-49. So here we are again, back to where we were, the far left and the far right, and nobody coming to the middle, unfortunately. Well, let's hope that sanity hits somebody.
Potentially there. Let me just say this. Yeah, I think we may end up with status quo or a status quo 2.0, kind of the way I've been thinking of it within the Senate, because even if there is that slight change to 51-49 Democrats over Republicans in the Senate here, we still got, again, those personalities I was mentioning stepping out of Kirsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, and who knows, someone else might be as well. So that one I'm not quite willing to put a pin in being anything different than it was just yet. But yeah, the House is the big question, and so only time will tell. But I will always argue that staying informed of what's going on is definitely the right way to make sure that you are, well, knowing what can be done when it comes to those situations. So appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I think we'll squeeze in one more call here real quick. We do have Tom in Otero County with us right now. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Hey there, Andrew.
Hey there, what's on your mind?
I heard about the proposed gun legislation. You know, people ought to figure out by now that don't work. These big cities with the strictest gun legislation in the country are just out of control. They're just off the hook. And they're total chaos. And they have all these laws, the bans and magazine restrictions, and criminals don't give a hoot about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
People got to start using their head. And then on the other hand, you have this case of that Walmart shooter scumbag. He should have been a tree decoration by now. That thing should have been done and over with a long time ago. And here they are in limbo. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, some of the consternation involving that case, of course, settles on the district attorney's office itself, and some of the recent filings kind of point to that. So that's another one of those ongoing situations that, unfortunately, there's no simple answer for, or even answer to the question of what's going to happen next, beyond much of the bigger questions of how will this turn out. I mean, we'll keep reporting on it and bringing the latest information as we can, because it's very important to me personally to make sure we stay up on that. I mean, of course, there's been pandemic delays and all that kind of thing, but I think one of the biggest questions remaining in people's minds is, how is this case even going to proceed, much less end up? But like I said, we'll keep our eye on that. But to your initial point there about laws and passing them, again, there's a difference between passing a law and passing an effective one, because we can pass all the laws we want, saying whatever we want, but there's obviously a gap to be bridged between then and actually having effectiveness on it. Because we could pass laws saying everyone has to be happy, and if you're not happy, you'll be thrown in jail, and therefore the only people left will have to be happy or be lying to themselves. But will that actually increase happiness? I'm gonna submit that kind of situation would probably be no. So obviously there's a gap to be bridged between statement and actual implementation and it becoming reality. So if we're not looking at the actual effectiveness of it, that's where study and actually looking at the impacts of policy that we try to focus on as much as possible comes in. And saying that, I mean, I guess that my general perspective is that a lot of the laws that end up restricting gun rights with the idea of removing them from the streets, taking them out of the hands of those that have malfeasance in mind. All good ideas, but is that the actual preponderance of what is coming out of the effects of it, or is it primarily affecting those that had no malfeasance, no inclination in their lives in order to act violently or illegally with them? Because another point to be further made that always comes up with me talking about, the impact of guns, taking of lives, those kind of things. Murder is illegal. And yet we still have further laws to therefore make sure that is as much not going to happen as possible.
Yeah, one more thing. The holidays are coming up. I want to remind people, be real careful when you get behind the wheel of your car. Every bit as deadly as any AR-15. So when you get out on the road, be careful, drive friendly, and have a good holiday.
Well, appreciate that. You too there as well. Thanks for the point in the call. Have a good one. All right. Talk with you later there. I got to take that next break now. Again, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for a crash on the 54 northbound at the Kenworthy exit. Gateway West at Eastlake, a single vehicle accident there is blocking the right turn lane. Slow traffic on Mesa Street northbound from downtown to Artcraft with 9-minute delays. 27-minute delays on Global Reach southbound from Liberty Expressway down to Montana. And an injury accident South Mesa Hills east of Sunland Park. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
As you crunch the numbers trying to get the most out of your dollar, we'll throw in a $1,000 inflation bonus. Much better. Listen every hour from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win $1,000.
Listen to win $1,000 every hour, weekdays from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. It's the 1,000 inflation bonus on News Talk 690 a.m.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle, and my company is Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 to provide custom blinds, shades, and shutters at affordable prices. Our blinds are easy to install and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Sometimes life makes choices for us, so we need to make the most of the choices we do have. With annual enrollment starting October 15th, El Paso Health Plus is the local choice if you are covered by Medicare and Medicaid. Our local plan offers supplemental benefits like dental, transportation to medical appointments, great OTC benefits, vision, hearing, and much more. El Paso Health Plus also has programs designed to help keep you independent and healthy. So if you are covered by Medicare and Medicaid, El Paso Health Plus is the plan for you. Now is the time to enroll in a local Medicare Advantage plan, run by local people who live and work in El Paso. Enroll now with El Paso Health Plus if you are covered by Medicare and Medicaid. Call us at 833-742-3125 or visit us at ephmedicare.com. El Paso Health Plus, your local choice for Medicare and Medicaid.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, billing, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Whatever one works out better for you is the right place for you to be as we continue to have our conversation about the things that affect us here in the borderland and beyond. A lot of complementary kind of things. I mean, yes, national legislature things go in there. Statewide, the legislative session that's coming up, well, definitely be having some issues on those. We also have Mondo Moncada joining us over on the Twitch stream, along with Marky Mandingo, Stephen Christopher, Kathy Codry, Barbara Carrasco, RJ, Eric McNabb, Eric Von Holstein Rathlow, James Ratcliffe, Glenn Stewart, if I didn't see that already. Some more recent comments. Dropping those likes and reacts here. We do have commenting there. Alex Campos, Richard Genesee, Glenn Stewart, Ida Beza Gardner, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monica Cervantes, and I didn't say it already, Ione Grimm. But let's jump back in on those phone lines here right now. The number to call again, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have Johnny over in Central on the line with us here right now. Johnny, thanks for joining us.
Yes, good evening. I like to get on the train of the gentleman that called yesterday who addressed you as being a referee. Man,
Okay.
I tell you, I thought a football referee, basketball referee, or even a boxing referee had it hard. I got to give it to you, Andrew. You walk a real thin line, and you're doing a very good job. Start that first.
I appreciate that.
And secondly, let me get into some of the issues. The one of your callers, now the election's over, one of your callers I thought was kind of unfair to our local congresswoman here, Veronica Escobar. She would call and, criticize her for the last few months and everything, and I thought that wasn't fair. I wish, I know we got 2, 3, maybe 4 sides of the table on all kind of issues politically, but
sure.
I always felt that name calling a person who was trying to represent us was unfair. But anyway, I wish that lady hadn't been so critical of Miss Escobar. But anyway, hopefully in the future she won't do this. Secondly, the AR-15. Even Beto O'Rourke, I think he fell short. I wish he had gone all the way and said ban the AR-15 period. He went from 18 to 21 or something. And I don't know what's so hard about these politicians not just being man and woman enough to say, get the weapon off the street. I'm reminded of what happened last week. Seeing this gentleman, and they showed him on the news. I took a picture of him, just looked at him, just casually walking down Joe Battle with looked like an assault weapon in his hand. And all the people in that area just, I'm quite sure they were just panicking, And one of the gentlemen approached him and asked him, did he want to ride or something? He said, oh, no, I'm just out for an exercise, getting my exercise. Now, why would anyone want to be walking around with an AR-15 to get exercise? It's very scary. Had the people gotten rid of that weapon off the streets some time ago, we wouldn't be even dealing with that. And I was listening at one of the houses of Congress talking about if the president, they take over the House, they're going to start going after Biden's son, Hunter. My attitude is this: I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or liberal. Don't spend my taxpayers' dollars going after family members of presidents. I would feel the same way if someone said they want to go after Trump's children. Let's stick with the leader, not the family. And one more thing, last night I saw President Pence, Vice President Pence on the phone, on the being interviewed. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was cringeworthy. I mean, here we are 2 years later, and he didn't seem to have the nerve enough to say that he thought that man was the reason that he almost got killed. So I'll just listen to what you think about what I just said, Andrew.
Sure thing. Responding to specifically what you're talking about, the local situation that happened at the end of last week, where a gentleman was in full kit, so to speak, here wearing a plate. I'm not sure if it was a plate carrier or just like a chest rig or something here. It didn't look like it had a plate in it in any case, from what I could see, and a rifle held at the low ready. I've been previously aware of, particularly in previous legislative sessions, like specifically lead up to 2018, when there was actually open carry passed in Texas. Now, open carry is not exactly a blanket term. We are talking about the fact that there is different classes of weapon, of course, rifles, shotguns, handguns, those kind of things. Long guns, generally, those things that are not just handguns, requiring like 2 hands to be fired. Technically, yes, we're getting really into semantics here, but long guns, the general category of guns that are long, if you want to be real simplistic about it, have been legal for open carry here in Texas for years. It was the open carry of handguns that were not able to be done, so only concealed carry. That's why there's like the previously called the concealed handgun license, CHL, but now the LTC license to carry, even though we still have now constitutional carry / permitless carry here in Texas. But point I'm trying to set up here is that during those times leading up to that, I was aware of groups out there wanted to do protests that or wanted to push towards having open carry legal. And they would do what they called open carry marches, where a group of people, usually with just like a ton of flags, would get together, even in our local area, but also many other parts of the state, in order to basically march around with their long arms. But a very specific point that was made from those groups here, and one that sticks with me, was that the way you carry it, like, sure, have the rifle with you. And again, the point that was actually made as that local gentleman more recently was that he was not technically violating any law. He was, arguably exercising his rights, even if I would further argue there's exercising your rights in smart and stupid ways, and that one's tending more towards the latter, because what I'm getting at here is with those groups such as Open Carry Texas and those kind of things, what they would do is they would recommend people, if they were going to be marching with their firearm and were wanting to make a point about it, to either have it slung or at what's called parade carry, essentially the over-the-shoulder, buttstock in hand, rifle barrel pointed up. Lots of pictures I saw of that individual he was carrying it what's called the low ready stance, with it in hand, finger not necessarily on the trigger, but ready to move to it, and the barrel pointed downwards. The low ready kind of stance that you would see someone essentially anticipating or moving towards a situation where they might potentially, you see it a lot in movies when people are moving through and not actively aiming at someone here. So no, it wasn't necessarily brandishing it or aiming it at someone, but even if I was of not in this kind of a position where I would go out and protest and do things like that, that is super the way I would go out there, even if I was just trying to make a point about carrying it. You're not running everywhere around like it in that position. And if you want to keep practicing that way, get a treadmill, my dude, because in this day and age, even if it is your right, saying that, well, it's my right regardless of the consequences, is a little bit foolhardy at best here. So to say that you want to get out the streets, frankly, I will say I agree with the idea of getting guns off the streets. I would prefer them to be in my home, in my safe, those kind of things here. But the problem is that a lot of the laws that end up being suggested don't just focus on the streets. It's not I think as someone managed or mentioned in the comments there, a magnet just focusing on those that are not in, let's call them legitimate hands, or those that, again, plan nefarious things with them. It is often being those that are the most law-abiding that these end up targeting for the most part. So if you want to see things removed or no longer available, sure, that's your prerogative. You could certainly push for that. But also, let's make sure that we're actually talking about the impact that's going to be happening. Because if it takes one hand out of the hands of a criminal, one gun out of the hand of a criminal, sure, that is a not bad goal. But if in the meantime it takes thousands, if not millions of them out of those completely law-abiding, and let's make no mistake, there are millions of them. If AR-15s, my contention continues to be, or AK-47s, any of those assault weapon platforms, or modern sporting rifle would be a much more accurate way to describe them in my mind. If you're going to say that we want to just get rid of them overall, you have to admit that most of the ways that have been proposed by it are going to remove it from those that were probably never going to be an issue in the first place. We're not talking about targeting gangs, targeting criminals, targeting those that, again, plan to do harm with it. Anytime any reasonable gun owner I know of or have had conversation with says that, the fact that matter that these things can happen certainly hurts the soul, and it's not something that we find ourselves supporting the ability to have that continue, but most of what's been proposed doesn't actually do that. It has the vast majority of the impact, if any impact at all, on the other side of it, on those that are, again, legally and going through the correct processes to be able to own firearms. So if there was a solution that would primarily focus on those criminals, those who have done wrong with it, and beyond the fact that, well, you have now committed a crime with a gun, are now liable, sure, that exists, but focusing on that level of enforcement is never really a major part of the conversation, which is my primary concern with it there. So do appreciate the point in the call and your concerns there. So you have a good one. Do appreciate it. We are well overdue for that next break right now. Got a little bit on not a less worn soapbox, but got to take that next break. Coming out of this break, we will talk more about some of the points there and some more of the comments, dip into more of those here. But if you want to get on the line again, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. A murder investigation where a 52-year-old man was found dead in his home in northeast El Paso remains unsolved. The victim, who remains unidentified, was found dead in a home at 8600 Robert Drive on Thursday. During an investigation, authorities learned of another shooting victim at a home on Kenneth Street near Robert Drive. Police officials say the second shooting victim survived but did not want to cooperate. Our news crews saw a man being placed into an ambulance. On Kenneth Street. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has announced that he's invoking the invasion clauses of the U.S. and Texas constitutions in his latest effort to address border security. In a tweet today, Abbott says that the move will fully authorize Texas to take unprecedented measures to defend the state against a so-called invasion. In the past, Abbott has stopped short of calling the situation at the border an invasion. The actions listed by the governor today include building a border wall in multiple counties and deploying gunboats to secure the border. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Northbound on the 54 Patriot before Kenworthy, a multi-vehicle crash has closed all lanes. All lanes closed. There's a backup already to Trans Mountain. Expect delays. Gateway West at Eastlake, a single vehicle accident's blocking the right turn lane. Global Reach is slow with 17-minute delays from the expressway down to Montana. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. It looks like we had another cold day for us today, but that was expected. And as we get going into Wednesday, we've got another push of colder air moving in, and that's going to make for a cooler and somewhat breezy day for your Wednesday, and that combination will certainly add to the chill. We will continue with our cold temperatures during the week, with possibly seeing our first freeze in El Paso. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Provember is back at Lowe's, and so are the savings. Power the possibilities with savings on the DeWalt tools you trust, like the DeWalt 16-piece reciprocating saw blade set was $29.98, now $19.98. It always pays to be a pro at Lowe's. Offer ends 12/28 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
At Affordable Dentures and Implants, that moment when we see a patient smile is everything to us. And we're proud to have helped millions of patients improve their smiles through affordable tooth replacement options. So whether it's a single tooth, full dentures, or dental implants, Affordable Dentures and Implants is here to help you. Go ahead and smile. Our new El Paso office, led by Dr. Kiso Uradiegu, is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. To schedule a free new patient consultation, call 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. That's 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. Again, our new El Paso office is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. Affordable Dentures and Implants. Go ahead and smile.
Go ahead and smile.
Hi, I'm Kyle, and my company is Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 to provide custom blinds, shades, and shutters at affordable prices. Our blinds are easy to install and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk, trying to get back on track with the segments here. A little bit in-depth on things here, but squeezing what we can in before the end of the show. And a lot of comments coming in online, including the one that got me mentioning here, or slowly cracking up before we go into the break. RJ saying, gun-free streets really work for Chicago, Andrew. Why not? As well as some other points being made about drug and gun-free schools that are definitely doing so inherently, or do they actually take enforcement, I think is another big question to be had here. James Holmes saying criminals don't follow the laws, especially the mentally ill, and some other comments, including dryers back in stock. Anyway, a lot of different comments coming in there. Those chiming in, adding their 2 cents, and dropping those likes and reacts here. Again, trying to get that list here. Flock Jimenez, Stephen Christopher, Alex Campos, Richard Janessi, Glenn Stewart, Ida Beza Gardner, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monica Cervantes, and Ion Grimm. Do appreciate it, but let's jump back in on the phone lines here. We do have Kevin on the line here with us right now. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. I would like to check in on the idea of age requirements for different things. For example, Alcohol, I believe it's in all the 50 states. You must be 21. Smoking tobacco, I believe, is the same. And of course, voting is in the Constitution as 18 years old. But what I would like to know is, how do we get driver's licenses to be the same age? And I'm not talking about driver's licenses for vehicles that are used on a farm or something like that, but I mean a regular street driver license. Is the age the same for all the states? I doubt it. And if it isn't the same, then what is to stop a person from driving, let's say, in Nebraska and going down to Georgia, and Georgia has a 21 limit or minimum, and Nebraska has 18. I mean, how can we reconcile that? That's my question.
So it's largely based on residence. So simple answer to your question at the end, what's to stop them from going to another state to try to get the driver's license there? They do have to be a resident of that state. Now, if they're willing to, I don't know, maybe some kind of strange emancipation situation, go and do it there. But in that case, it may also affect those rights here. But I will agree with you that, yeah, it is a patchwork in those ways. Taking a quick look at it here, that there are some states in which, yeah, you can get like a provisional driver's license at age 14, particularly for like farm equipment, those kind of things. Some of them at being a full driver's license at 14, a lot of them 16, and some of them 18. So that is one of those patchworks situations, I will say.
I wasn't meaning that a person would travel to another state to get a driver's license from that state. What I'm saying is, someone has a driver license from Nebraska, and he is authorized to drive in Florida, although Florida may be 21, I don't know, to have be able to drive on the roads, because the driver's licenses are supposed to be recognized in all of the states equally, despite the age difference that's required to get one.
Yeah, the whole full faith and confidence part of it, that documents issued by one state that are recognized with the same category by another state have to have the full faith and confidence of it, even though there are some of those complicating factors in the meantime, such as the whole Real ID Act that could prevent you. I know New Mexico had the issue for a minute. Think it's been resolved, but I'll be honest, I haven't been keeping as close an eye on that one, of where you might not be able to actually like go into a bar or fly, depending on the actual requirements of the actual physical ID issued by your state. So that's a slight difference with it here. But yeah, you are correct that, yes, if you do have your license and it is of a state that has a lower minimum age, it does look like some of them, Alaska apparently does have it as actually 14 would be the bare minimum. But of course, there might be other legal situations even under that. I mean, it's an interesting, again, patchwork, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yes, and it used to be the same for drinking. I remember as a young man, we could drink in New York at 18. And then you go across the river to New Jersey or Pennsylvania, and I believe it was 21. So, there's a little danger there, especially, again, if you're driving. So I think that needs to be made national, too, the driver license age for regular civilian driver's license, not farm equipment or anything. I believe that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I remember growing up because, ever since I became at least aware of like laws involving drinking, I'm not saying this was entirely within my lifetime, but I remember someone asking me, is it 21 to drink here now? Because I was aware that ever since I became anywhere near the age of majority, and even well beforehand, that, 21 meant 21 was the line that I grew up with of, everywhere it's 21. But of course, there used to be its own patchwork that way. And of course, that's been one of the more interesting bits of analysis to be done on how that changed, because there was no federal law passed to make it 21 across the country, but it was more the power of the purse being done there, particularly with interstate funding, as making it, if you want to receive it, and this happened as far back as like the Reagan administration, actually, that if you want to receive it, kind of the same way Medicare has had this own kerfuffle over it, is if you want to receive it, you're going to go along with this. And that was one of the, maybe an outlier for the Reagan administration, but definitely an interesting exercise of that kind of power being used that might be seen as otherwise incongruent with at least the common conception of that time in office.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time spent with me, Andrew, and good luck to you, okay?
Yeah, appreciate it. You two have a good one there.
You too.
All right. Let's get at least one more call on the air here right now. Make sure I'm going down my list in the right way. I do believe we have Eric online with us here right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Yes, I guess I'll quickly comment on that gun, that guy who was walking around the city with a gun. Like, that was really heartbreaking to see. Like, I had a friend on Facebook say that, she pulled her kid out of school and the school's on high alert. And this is just the day after Texas chose Greg Abbott, who's owned by the NRA, to blindly oppose all common sense gun laws that would protect our communities and our children. And, it's not just criminals misusing guns. It's just everyday people who, like now, because Greg Abbott, you can conceal and carry without a concealed carry license. That means you could have no idea how the laws work. You can have no idea how to shoot a gun. And you could be out and about carrying a gun, not knowing when you can legally use it. And a lot of these misuses of guns are just idiots carrying their gun around. They get in a fight and they get their ass kicked. They get their gun from their car and they shoot a person dead. And that's not legal, but now more people have the ability to misuse guns. And conservatives don't really care about that. It's all bad faith because they think that common sense gun laws are part of a communist plot to take everyone's guns, and subjugate the people. That's what they deeply believe inside. So all this bad faith concern about the efficacy of gun regulations and saving lives, I just find it very irresponsible and bad faith. Texas, we're going to have a person owned by the NRA, as our governor for the next 4 years. It's heartbreaking. It really is.
I mean, when we talk about bad faith here, I think that saying that it's going to be, whatever the assumption you have about Greg Abbott, frankly, I was with you on some of the analysis right up until you say, and therefore everyone who disagrees with me on this is bad, because when you come down to that, second grade analysis of this here, the fact of the matter is that, yes, I fully encourage people to be responsibly armed Americans, which means training, knowledge, knowing what the laws are, because anyone thinking even back when it was to conceal carry, you had to have the license to carry LTC. Anyone thinking that that was their Rambo permission card is a patent idiot, because if anything, you then have a higher burden on yourself to remove yourself from a conflict, and thinking that you have any more rights than any other person because of that. There are the people out there that sell the concealed carry badge ID holders that look like a vague kind of shield looking thing, and that is just the height of the best way, the way I'm going to say it right now, is stupidity, because thinking that and realizing what the actual responsibilities are upon you at that point. Yes, rights and responsibilities go hand in hand, but rights are the ones that come from the laws, the responsibilities that go along with it, what you need to understand and grow as an adult human being. So if that's the part you're concerned about when it comes to the actual what happens beyond the law here, that's where the responsibility part comes in. So if you are just saying that, well, because someone could misuse it and no one has the right and ability to, we need to look at the perspective of what the actual percentages are with that, because the fact of the matter is that, if we were talking about every AR-15, the roughly guesstimation last information I saw, 20 million of them in this country, if everyone was poised to kill everyone around them, there would be no one left in this country at this point. So obviously there's an operator component here that is not much reflected in the law, or at the very least the way it's talked about. And to say that there is no one out there that actually wants to take away all of the guns here, that's not exactly a good faith argument either, because there have literally been national politicians that have been out there saying that. The one that comes to mind immediately is Dianne Feinstein, but there have been many that have made that is the end goal of each, and they see these as an incremental step. It's not a theory, it's been stated.
Yeah, but that has no actual possibility of passing because of the Second Amendment. And most importantly, Greg Abbott, he's owned by the NRA, just like how conservative talk radio hosts can't say anything negative about Trump. They'll be kicked out of the party from big money. Republicans can't say promote support for common sense gun laws because the NRA will kick them out of the party. Because they're now an existential communist threat to the country. These narratives, they really are extremist and prevent objective analysis on the efficacy or of these gun laws, these proposed common sense gun laws. They're common sense for a reason. But conservatives, they legitimately believe these wild narratives that prevent them from having honest, data-driven, responsible discussions about this issue. And conservative media is the heart of the problem on this.
Again, if you're going to keep doing this whole 30,000 foot talking over our heads and not actually engaging on the issues here, look, the factors that exist within the state of Texas and our community, yeah, it's not exactly likely, given the way electoral tendencies have happened or more, that we are going to see those laws change. But just saying, well, they're not likely to, therefore we don't need to worry about people who are talking about them, that isn't exactly a good argument either, because saying that, oh no, there's someone out there that absolutely wants to eat my face and make it legal for them to eat my face, but don't worry, that probably won't pass, doesn't make me feel any better about the face-eating party being out there and supporting that kind of an ideology, because if there's anything that has been more or less constant, like we were talking about the whole immigration situation, change, flux, and not being the same it was yesterday has been about the only consistent thing when it comes to actually what could be legislatively possible. And there's the whole Overton window conversation to be had about what is considered acceptable and that shifting over time. We've seen that historically. So just saying that, well, it probably won't happen, so therefore saying that, are you concerned about it happening is unreasonable, is just, that's not going to fly with me, and I think with a lot of people on that point there. So appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth. We got to take that break now here. So coming out of this break, we're going to be closing out the show. Tell we got coming up for you, and of course, getting ready for the next one. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic's at a standstill on the 54 Patriot northbound from Hondo Pass to Kenworthy with 30-minute delays. That's because of a crash blocking all lanes on the 54 Patriot just before Kenworthy. Stop-and-go traffic on the I-10 eastbound from Prospect to Reynolds with 10-minute delays. 54 south is slow from Stan Roberts to Kenworthy, 28-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Provember is back at Lowe's, and so are the savings. Power the possibilities with savings on the DeWalt tools you trust, like the DeWalt 16-piece reciprocating saw blade set was $29.98, now $19.98. It always pays to be a pro at Lowe's. Offer ends 12/28 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. The Black Friday sales event starts now, so do yourself a favor and don't wait. Beat the rush and get door-busting Black Friday deals on every single new and certified pre-owned vehicle all month long.
Trade and upgrade for less with huge Black Friday savings all month long at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your current trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. Save thousands with 2.9% APR for 72 months, plus $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star with no payments till next year. Get $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Dodge Charger GT, SXT, and on the all-new redesigned 2022 Jeep Compass with no payments till next year. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 2.9% APR is $15.15 per thousand. Finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Super out of time here for this show, but of course we got another one on deck for you, back in time and all alive all this week here. Yes, we got some holidays coming up, so stay in touch for those schedules here. No, we won't expect you at all be joining us here live in studio on days when we're supposed to be celebrating, but more for the most part, we'll be doing the things as we normally do, except for those exceptions. So, a couple of things we got coming up for you here. More talk about, of course, some of those important dates and deadlines, including for medical issues or medical coverage, I should say. But that and more to come here. I want to thank each and every one of you that did call in, comment, participate in the show in any way, in any fashion, because, yes, regardless of what the sentiment may be and how much I agree or disagree with it, having the discussion and getting into these issues, I think, is absolutely the important thing and something that we need to continue having focus on here. And I'll keep striving for that every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So until the next one, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when you're out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic's at a standstill on the 54 Patriot northbound from Hondo Pass to Kenworthy with 30-minute delays. That's because of a crash blocking all lanes on the 54 Patriot just before Kenworthy. Stop-and-go traffic on the I-10 eastbound from Prospect to Reynolds with 10-minute delays. 54 south is slow from Stan Roberts to Kenworthy, 28-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
A construction site is a noisy place where things can be misinterpreted. We need to redo the drywall. It can sound a lot like,
rewire the hull? They're firing, Paul.
wait, what did I do? Or even,
Install a waterfall. Whose dumb idea was this?
be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk. From the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building. Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, how about that drywall?
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Poland is confirming it was Russian missiles that landed in the country, killing 2 people. The explosions in Poland were reported Tuesday morning, but the confirmation they were Russian missiles wasn't released until this evening. Poland is a NATO member, and Fox News reports the Polish president described the incident as an Article 4 situation. State Department Principal Deputy Spokesperson Vaden Patel spoke with reporters.
Of course, Poland is an important ally and partner, and like I said, we are working with them to determine what happened and assess next steps as well.
The first step in getting Americans back on the moon and further into deep space may happen in hours. Artemis 1 launch is set to take place